if there's people outside, then they're clearly attacking. She's a Wallace House nationalist, and so if there's people that don't belong here, right, she goes crazy. So she's trying to get them back across the border, as it were. Yeah, she's screaming, "Go back to your home! Go back to your home!"
Go back to where you came from.
Exactly. That's what that's my interpretation of every bark.
It's good to get this out before it's recording.
Yeah.
Well, I am recording, so this might end up in our little cold open. So.
Yeah, my dog's not racist. It's everybody. So.
Welcome, everybody, to the Odd Testament podcast. My name is Ryan.
And I'm Eric.
I'm Greg. And this is Ruby.
Ruby, what is going on? Glad to have you guys.
First guest.
Our very first guest. I love it. I love it.
How are you?
Ruby, this is the place.
I don't have anywhere to put her, so she's just going to be here. So.
Yes,
it's where it's going to be. Angie's still at work. My wife's still at work. So anyway,
love it.
Go ahead.
Love it. Well, this is the place where we dive into strange, weird, curious stories from the Bible. And whether you are new to faith or you are just looking for a laugh or you're looking to just maybe try to think about scripture differently, this is the place for you. And we are going to get started. We've been doing kind of some get to know you icebreaker questions a little bit, and I wanted to ask you guys this. Last week we did movies. I'm going to ask you guys what TV shows are you watching right now? What's like a TV show you're watching, or maybe like a series on Netflix or something that is like got you encapsulated, or got you just hooked. Like what are you watching?
Let's see. We are finishing up, like, you have guilty stuff, and it's mostly that we do sitcoms just to wind down, and they're easy. And so this one, we've watched tons of different things. We just finished getting through Goldbergs.
Nice.
Nice.
That's a fun one. Throwback.
It's sort of it's like watching the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And but you're 5 seasons in and you're like, 5 more. Well, I can't quit now. I'm not a loser.
Keep going,
yeah, you just got to keep going. So anyway, that was fine. And then I rewatched Sherlock.
Ooh, fun one. Benedict Cumberbatch.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good one. We're watching Abbott Elementary. Have you guys seen that? It's a kind of that Office style interview / they're just kind of living life documentary style of an inner city Philadelphia school. And so the teachers are character, they all got these funny flaws and all that stuff. It's really good. If you get a chance, check it out. They just did a crossover episode with the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia
really?
TV show. Yeah,
because they're both set in Philadelphia.
Correct. Yeah. And so I haven't watched that one yet, but I'm excited about that. And then the last drama that we watched, we watched the Dune Prophecy, I think is what it was called. It was it's hard to call it a prequel because it's like 3,000 or 5,000 years before the Dune movies or something.
Like a super prequel.
Yeah. Exactly. And that was great. I love the Dune movies. So it was a fun show. We both enjoyed it.
Awesome.
Yeah. You, Ryan?
So I'm kind of watching 2 right now. One is like appropriate for my kids. The other is not appropriate for my kids. And my oldest son is getting, he's getting too smart now to where he knows like I watch a show that he can't watch. And he asked me, he goes, Dad, if we can't watch it, should you be watching it? I'm like,
Isn't that
probably
terrible?
not.
Because then you got to hit them. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a
That's
joke.
great.
If you're listening, that's a joke.
Lock him in the closet for 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jokes are
No.
when you say things that may not be what you actually believe in.
Well, next
For
week
humor's
we're gonna talk about spare the rod, spoil the child, right?
Oh,
Yeah, so-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There we
That's
go.
right.
So my shows, the one that's appropriate for my kids, appropriate in air quotes, I guess, depending on some people's perspective in 2025, is Saved by the Bell. So we have a Samsung TV, and Samsung has like Samsung TV Plus, where they just have a ton of different channels for
Yeah.
free, and they have a Saved by the Bell channel, and so we just leave it on Saved by the Bell, and it's just a 24/7 loop of Saved by the Bell. And so my kids are all singing the theme song tonight. I'm like, I feel like I'm doing something right as a parent, you know. So that's the appropriate one. The
That's
inappropriate,
great.
I'm watching Suits. Have you guys seen Suits?
My wife loved the show, so I came in on a couple episodes. It was good from what I saw.
Yeah,
I can't remember why we stopped. We did stop. We watched a few. So
Yeah, I thought like because it started in like I think 2011 or something, and I'd always seen commercials for it, never really watched it. Thought it kind of looked weird, like how good could a show about lawyers be? But like I'm enthralled with it. It's really good. It's really good. So that's
yeah,
what
you
I'm-
talk with our friend Jordan Hicks, and you're like, oh, lawyers are the worst.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
yeah. You know, he lives like 40 minutes from me. Did you guys know that?
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So
Yeah.
he came down in September. We watched a Husker game together. We're planning on going to a couple Husker games in the area next year. Like,
It's awesome.
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
Yeah.
It's-
And speaking of Philly, I know it's dating the podcast a little bit, but congrats Eagles fans if you're an Eagles fan.
yeah, right.
Just a complete domination. That was a game.
What a terrible game. Good. I don't really care. I mean, if I'm rooting, I mean, I live near Kansas City, so and a bunch of friends are Kansas City nuts, and so great. I'm Kansas City, but I'm not like bleed red and yellow. I mean, I bleed red, but not yellow, because then it's pus, right? So that's gross. You're welcome, Eric.
Ketchup and mustard.
That's what I'm here for. But man, I just want a good game, and
Yeah, that was embarrassing.
yeah, they got the
So
Eagles playing against the JV second string.
So being an hour from Philadelphia, everybody here is Eagles fans. And so it's nice to not have to walk around to a bunch of to an entire city or region just being grumpy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
will church attendance go up this next Sunday?
Probably. God does answer prayers.
That's right.
So I did pray for the Eagles twice in service on Sunday. So maybe that's heretical. I don't know, but
for all the government workers that still have jobs, come to church anyway.
Yes.
I remember.
Sorry, we're getting too real. Yeah.
Yes.
I remember an episode of did you guys ever watch the show Third Rock from the Sun?
Oh,
it was
brilliant. So great. If you haven't seen it, you have to.
Yeah, the kid in the show was like a water boy for the football team, and like the football team prayed before the game, and they're like, he asked the question, he goes, is the other team also praying? And they go, yeah, probably. And he goes, so is it our God versus their God? Like which God is going to like answer who's going to win? You know, like both sides are praying for the win. Like, so just decides, I guess, well, whoever wins, God loves more. You know, that's
it.
Good theology.
That's Old Testament. Yeah.
Yep.
At least culture.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. So
Yeah.
last week, guys, we talked about we started talking about creation. We got to Genesis 1, verse 1, and that's as far as we got.
Nice, good start.
We talked about a lot of different things, though. We talked about Elohim, and is Elohim multiple gods, or is it just how it talked about Yahweh God before he named himself, all that. Like we got into that. And this week I want to continue in creation, but I want to get more to the actual like God creating stuff. And so do you guys have any thoughts before we get going in that?
No, I love the story.
No, I don't remember if I said it last week, but that I just like the way the words work, and those first few words of "in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." It may be more literal as God was creating, or sort of as it was when it all started. God did this. I mean, kind of stuff. So
yeah.
You ever have words just disappear out of your head, like you're halfway through a sentence and then they're gone?
Yep.
That's what just happened.
So
when God began creating.
Yes. So
It's
that's
close
what
to
the
what it is, yeah.
that's what the Hebrew Bible says.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I actually have a Hebrew Bible.
Let's go.
And that's the exact wording. It says, when God began to create heaven and earth,
Yeah.
and the earth was then welter and waste and darkness over the deep, that
Yeah.
like, so
Yeah.
that's good. I love that. So I'm gonna read, and then I'll stop. We can discuss that kind of thing, but I'm gonna read from the New Living Translation, if you guys are okay with that, because that's what I understand best. I know there are some people that are like King James only, or never this translation or whatever, but like I'm of the mind of like, I'm gonna read what I understand and what's gonna help me understand best. So
Same.
for me it's New Living Translation. So
Yeah.
Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. Then he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night. And evening passed, morning came, marking the first day. Okay, then God said, "Let there be space between the waters to separate the waters from the heaven, from the waters from the earth." And that is what happened. God made this space to separate the waters of earth from the waters of heaven. God called the space sky, and evening passed and morning came, marking the second day. Now, I do want to dive into this because in the King James Version, it talks about a firmament. In other versions, it talks about a vault. What is that? Some people think that's just a way to talk about the sky. Some people think there was an actual dome of water that used to cover the earth. What do you guys think? What's going on there?
I like the mythology of the dome theory, even to that, like explaining some of the like age length, that there was like an extra atmosphere in a way, that we talk about the protection and different atmosphere, and the global warming and all this stuff, and how we're eroding all blah 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 greenhouse gases, that there was this extra protection, the mythology of the God establishing it in his intention of creation, that there wasn't just creation and then you're left to your own devices, that he had even a greater protection over that. And then also to take the story of Noah literally, then where does all the water come from? And where did all that water go? I like the mythology of it. Like, and so that being a way to interpret, like, I have no problem as far as like someone making that, if the theology point of view comes from that place of God's protection and him wanting to do that. And then by the time you get to Noah, he is removing all those layers of protection, and you start to see age go down, and you start to see the disease becoming more rampant because of all the craziness that was happening in there. So I really like the mythology of that. You know, we talked about last week of, you know, is this a carried over story? Is it, you know, is this an origin story? You know, coming from the place that I don't believe in the literal interpretation of what we're getting right here, but we do get a sense that I think the intention of God was creating a protection, and there was these spaces that he was aware of that he's giving Moses, the writer, maybe a tune into what was happening.
Yeah, Eileen, I like different points of view and different opinions and stuff. We have a certain amount of information. You'll hear me time to time call it data. Basically, this is the stuff we can work with. And I think at the beginning level is we have a story about that is clearly about how things came to be initially. And I think we can go too far right away. I don't have a problem. And if I say I don't have a problem, then I have a problem with something, right? I'm implying that. And so I do, but I want to clarify that I want us to do, not just us, but everybody to engage it. I don't want to kill that off. But if we haven't, if we're not really getting the story first, then I think we can get off. And so the assumption that we've got the story, and again, not we, I mean, again, global, I'll keep clarifying that. But so this is about when it all began. It's written thousands of years ago by a culture that is saying, here's our concept of how things are structured. If I look up, there's things above me, and there seems to be also things that are way above me. There's a place that birds fly, and then there's a place even further above that birds don't fly, but there's lights up there. And water seems to fall out of places. And so at some point you hear or God talking about windows, open up the windows and for rain and things like that. And then they look below and they have the thing they're standing on. But then they have some concept of something beneath that, which seems to be the grave. And if we take all these and go, no, they have to be absolutely literal. I go, really? Because you seem to be asking questions that if I told you a story about, I'm making up a story now, and man, my dog was going crazy, and so I threw on my shoes and then went outside to see what was going on there. And you stopped me and went, "What color shoes?"
Mm-hmm.
What? You skipped. I mean, the most important part of that story is, what did I meet outside?
Yeah.
And instead you're wondering about my shoes, because I included, it's in the story, but it's not the point. Now, if we get really into it and you're super into shoes and you've heard the story and you get the story, you go, were those slip-ons? Were those Crocs and stuff? You're still weird, but that's okay. Everyone's their own little weird. But anyway, so we have this, and I'll shut up. We have what I think Hebrew it's rakia, which is this supposed dome. I know there's a lot of people who want that to be literal. For me, it's doing the work of saying there's the things that are above where the skylights are. There's the things in the in-between where the birds fly and where we live. It to me is what's going on. And just a description that it's setting up the rest of the creation story. So in my read.
Is there a chance that it's poetic language that you know what I mean? Like I don't know.
Have you read anyone that this is not a, I don't know. Have you read, is there something you have read that kind of
well, I read a little commentary just basically talking about rakia and how it's a Hebrew word that suggests a hammered out slab, and the way it describes it, it's like a flat surface. You know what I mean? And I'm just, I mean, obviously there's no flat surfaces up there if you look and see, you know, like, I don't know, like, is it just a poetic way of talking about what's up there, you know, talking about, you know,
Absolutely.
Identifying different realms, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Is it, metaphorical and stuff like that? It seems to be the only way we describe things. I mean, that is how we explain things. So how, I don't know, I don't know, I don't want to get too down into the weeds, but it's I'd say it's metaphor, not even metaphor, is it? It's figurative, maybe. I'm not finding the right word for it, but so maybe poetic is there. But the reason I lean away from poetic is because poetic kind of has a meter to it, but it is trying to describe something that, I guess there's metaphor. It's trying to describe something that is like, it's simile. This is what I'm looking for. It's like this. And so if you're a literalist, then you're going to go, no, it says it is. Okay. It's fine. If you believe it's a literal dome or flat piece, we're still fine. We haven't changed the story. I just think we might be paying attention. If you're into that, you might be paying attention to it a little too quick. But on the other hand, maybe you understand, maybe the person understands the whole story, and this is the thing that they're like, it's this. Cool. Yeah. I probably need to learn.
Cool.
Not really. I'm just faking.
Yeah.
I totally do. I do.
What about you, Ryan? How all those little elements, how have you kind of interpreted those and learned about those over your time?
Yeah, so I just think it's hard to not read into the scripture what I already know about the rest of scripture. If that makes sense. Like I can't unlearn and unknow what I know about the rest of the book. Yeah. And then just read Genesis at face value. You know what I mean? But I know Genesis and Revelation have a lot of correlation, and there's a lot of imagery in both. And imagery language, right? And it's meant to communicate something, you know, but is it necessarily literal? I don't know. I'm not opposed to it being literal. Could a dome of water or whatever really have existed at the beginning of sure, you know, I'm not opposed to that. Do I think that's what happened? I don't know. At this point, like kind of what you're saying, Greg, like I don't really care because that's not what the story's trying to tell me. That's not the point of the story, you know. If I had to pick one or the other, I would say it's more figurative or poetic more than it is literal. For sure. Just my own leaning. But I'm not closed to any, you know, I'm not close to either of them, you know, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
Like, and I'll clarify, sorry, I get this out of my head. Not to be contentious, I want it to be okay for us to disagree. And I'm not disagreeing with Ryan. I'm saying that a listener, it's okay if we don't think something like this, or if I think differently than you do on this particular thing. For sure. It just is. It doesn't change whether Jesus came and died for us and things like that. Where I land, if I'm going to be super honest, I land hard on this is a story meant to express something, and it's not the state of the world and how science should be interpreting. This is not a scientific statement. And I go hard at this. And the only reason I'm saying it that hard is because I want people to understand, if you disagree with me, good.
Sure.
I will hold to you're incorrect. And you should hold to that I'm incorrect. Actually, you should come around to what I'm thinking, because I do think I'm right. But I also don't have my entire life hanging on this,
For
I
sure.
just, yeah, I have certain values. Anyway,
I think
sorry.
the thing you guys were both talking about, I mean, I think potentially all three of us kind of hit on is looking at some of these larger themes of what's
Nice.
happening here. Like, so Ryan, I know something you, as we were talking in our text before, like you could really break up the creation story in a lot of different themes and a lot of different rhythms, depending on what angle or what you're trying to get out of the information. So there is, I think, the part of going, okay, Bible, like, you're reading me as much as I'm reading you, so I'm not going to overly insert myself. But then there's times you want to try to find yourself in this story. I think last week we talked about okay, he is God, he did it. Let's go with that being the overall arching theme that we all agree on, whether you agree it's literal or figurative, mythology or otherwise. Like, God did it. That's what we're all kind of coming towards.
Yes.
But then he separates days, like, okay, there's a theme. What is he talking about literal days? Okay, maybe not, but he is talking about rhythm. So God is establishing rhythm. Ryan, what was you kind of broke it down into 3 sections that I really liked. If I just can't remember the exact words in the text.
So creating, ordering, and then resting.
Yeah, I really like that. Like, so, like, yeah, like, to me, that whole part of it of just going, cool. In this first section right here, he is establishing creation, and what can we now look at in our, like, we woke up and the sun was there. If you woke up in the middle of the night, it wasn't there. Did Apollo steal it? Or did the earth rotate? Like, and then, and what caused that? Oh, it says that God is putting this in order, and he's establishing day and night, which means he's establishing a rotation. He's so there's some really cool things I like there. What other themes, I guess, in this first section here really stands out to you guys?
Yeah, so I haven't read it yet, but like days 1 through 3 is a lot of like creating, right? He creates the heavens and the earth. He separates light from dark. He separates land from sky, or however I just read it, right? Like, it's just a lot of creating zones or areas, and then days 4 through 6 are him filling those and ordering, like, ordering
Populating
that
the
way.
space.
Yeah, for sure. Giving function to the space and the that kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
When you look at it that way, this is a story about, like, God giving purpose, God creating and giving and assigning purpose, right? And then that, if you look at it that way, it changes the way you read verse 26, 27. And then God said, let us make human beings in our image to be like us. Huge purpose statement right there.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of human beings? To be like God on earth. We're his representatives, And so when you read it that way, it goes from, oh, this is a science textbook, to, oh, this is why I'm here.
Yeah,
exactly.
Love that.
And it fits the context of the ancient Near East, where at least some of the issue was who gets to declare purpose, who gets to declare fate, in a sense. There's another word there too, but there in the Enuma Elish that Ryan was talking about last week, there's this who gets to have the tablet of destinies, who gets, in a sense, like he's saying, that gets to declare fate, purpose, meaning, and things like that. And it doesn't, this conclusion doesn't, it changes the narrative,
Mhm.
but it doesn't make the narrative weaker. It,
Hmm.
I've never met somebody, I've met plenty of people who go, I don't quite follow, which is fine. I've never met somebody who is followed, who is getting it, who went, no, I think this other, I don't think it's full enough. They go, oh, wow. Okay. So this is doing more work and better work than what I
Hmm.
thought it was.
Mhm.
This is God, like Ryan said, declaring purpose in a very real way, having created the spaces that things function in, then culminating in the creation of man.
Mhm.
Whereas in these other, what are actual myths, or even in the definition of myth, which this one may be too, but anyway, I'm not saying I agree with it's a myth, but if you're looking at just literal definitions of it, but um, why were humans created?
Mhm.
And you've got other traditions, another around that time, that the reason humans are created is basically to be cattle,
Mhm.
slaves, that the gods were tired of doing work. And so they created men and women to go do that. And it was
Yeah.
just created people.
Yeah.
Is
That
that what
Genesis mentions men and women are in two is really interesting too. But anyway,
is that what sacrifice is about? I heard a
part of
theory
it, yeah,
that
yeah,
sacrifice to like pagan deities was like these
yeah.
gods don't want to do any work, and so how do they eat the sacrifices that the people presented them? Is that a thing, or
Yeah.
did I just kind of make that up?
That seems to be. I mean, the reading I've done says that's possible. I mean, none of us were there, and I don't
Right.
care what you're. um, and so we're all all the people that know way more than I do are interpreting information that they're getting, which is, I think, important. But also, they're really good at this, and they've been doing it a really long time.
Mhm.
So. Lean toward trusting it, but yeah, there's a serving of the God in the sense of you would imagine that the God's hungry, and so you feed them. And the smell, for some reason, is pleasing to them. When we're talking about smell, we're not talking about burnt blood. They would get rid of that. We're talking about a barbecue, honestly.
Mhm.
And it sounds like silly, but that
Yeah.
Even Old Testament sacrifices. The big ones were we're
Yeah.
going to
Burnt
honor
offerings
God,
and
and
Deuteronomy,
yeah,
and yeah,
we're going to honor God, and we're going to party.
yeah. It's a pleasing
So
smell, and yeah.
absolutely. So
Hmm.
it does that. It honors a God because you're doing that, and so eventually, also funny is in those traditions. Funny to me is that the gods got people got a bunch of people, and so at some point we'll probably talk about the flood, and on their side. The reason the flood happened is the gods got annoyed with how noisy people were. So they decided to wipe them out. So anyway.
So the gods were the old curmudgeons and get off
Yeah.
my
Oh,
lawn.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, okay, you solved the problem. And now I'm like, oh, you're too much. Jeez.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's funny. Okay, so you kind of mentioned it a little bit, and I know, like, based on what we said, it's not the point, but Eric, I think you're the one that brought it up.
Mhm.
Literal 24-hour days or not?
I don't think so. But yeah, to something I think you said, Ryan, which is like, yeah, as soon as you kind of open the door into some other areas of understanding of how this time was written and why it was written, you can kind of put down some of the literal what 24 hours might have meant. And I've always really loved the establishment of 7 being the most important thing. And if you establish a day and night, and your culture that you're speaking to understands day and night, you wouldn't try to comprehend hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of years. You would just say day. And then, but the important thing was to get to 7, which would be completion. And so I've always liked that part of it. And so how do you get to 7? Well, you got to break it down by day. And so you would do the 24 hours within that day. So that would be my that is my answer to those who
Yeah.
ask that. Yeah.
Yeah, as far as the day thing, assuming we think the sun is involved in day and night,
Right.
it's not actually placed if we're going to do this
Yeah.
Correct.
until day 4.
Right.
And so even though there's a light, he said, let there be light. It's not clarified until day 4. And yet evening passed and morning came. So I don't, if you think it's literal, fine. I'm not sure what is
Make a
gotten from
stance.
that. Oh, I'm fully happily confused at any other thought about it. That this is not 24-hour periods. And that it would be changes nothing about the story.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
do I, if I get wherever we're going and I find out, no, it was 24 hours, I'm like, oh, nice.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Where's the pool?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
My version of heaven has a pool and I'm rich.
I'm in line with you guys. And I know that makes boring content, but
Yeah.
I am. It doesn't really matter to the story. I'm inclined to think that it's not literal 24-hour days, but anything's possible for God. Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
In Psalms, which is poetry, right? I get that. But in Psalms, it talks about, 1,000 years is a day to the Lord, and a day is like 1,000 years. So like God is outside of time, so to,
Mhm.
To try to, confine him to time, it's just, it's not
Yeah.
possible. We can't understand it. So
This might be a little tangent, and so this could be an edit point potentially or not. So decide what it is, Ryan. But what was the point? Or do you guys feel like there was maybe not like a hard point in which there was a change of understanding for you with this, where you went, okay, it's not a literal 7 days. Like I think I could speak for all of us that there wasn't like some study session or some prayer moment where the heavens opened up and God revealed. He went like, "Hey, I'm not going to tell you the specific time, but it wasn't 7 days." And we're like, "Okay, cool." Like, but there was a time of learning. Like, what was the acceptance process of something like that? Was that in a time in which you were exploring larger ideas about the Bible, and this was one of the things that came up with it? Or were you in a time of questioning a lot of things? And so then you dropped a lot of stuff and then picked certain things back up. I would say that's my journey, where I dropped a lot about the Bible. I went, this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real. And then as I regained my faith, I went, well, let's pick this back up and let's pick this back up. And I don't know if I would say I left the 7-day literal 7-day thing on the ground. I just left the importance of what that needed to be on the ground. Does that make sense? And so mine came from I threw all things away and then started picking it up. Was that similar to you guys? Just because to Ryan, we all are kind of in an agreement, but to the listener who maybe has the same question but hasn't come to the confidence that we have, how did you guys get to some of these kinds of ideas?
Yeah, so for me, it started happening when I started understanding the hermeneutical process more. And what I mean by that is,
there you go.
Yeah. What I mean by that is in interpreting, understanding understanding the scripture to interpret it, that kind of thing. And because I used to be really into the details, trying to break down every little part and that kind of thing. And I was always looking at the parts, but understanding the process, you you eventually have to take the what you've learned about the parts and then reconstruct it to understand the whole better.
That's
And
very
then
nice.
once you start
Yep,
to understand the whole better, then you can take what you understand about the whole to then start understanding the little parts better. And it's just this
Yeah.
cyclical thing. And so once I started understanding that process a little better, I started reading the Bible as a whole narrative and not just like these little parts that just got crammed together somehow.
Mhm.
And once I started understanding the narrative is like, oh, this is one big story saying the same thing, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Once I started understanding that, then like I started seeing things differently, if that makes sense. Once I started understanding the big picture of the Bible and big picture of what it was trying to say, the little things like the 24-hour days or the firmament or whatever, you know, that kind of thing, that's not really an issue for me. That's not really an issue anymore, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So
Totally.
I don't know that I ever believed it was 24-hour days. I was, and I don't mean that like in some,
No,
oh, I'm so smart or whatever. I just,
you didn't grow up with
I
Veggie
was-
Tales like we did.
I didn't grow up Christian. Well, I didn't grow up this version or anyway,
Yeah.
reading the Bible and encountering the Bible in the same way. I grew up around people who are absolutely Christians and that they walked it out and lived it out.
Yeah.
And stuff. So there's no question about that. The Bible wasn't a part of our everyday life. And so, and yes, it is possible to do that. And so, I was really confused. I was confused by a number of things coming back to the States after I became a Christian in the first Gulf in the Gulf War. And I wasn't looking to be confused. I genuinely thought everybody was going to be really excited about God and I was going to learn a ton. And I did, but it was a little different. And so when I heard some of the conversations about literal 7 days, evolution is a lie. And it became very clear that some of those things, those don't go together, but were reactions to things other people had said. So the assumption that science and the Bible don't go together, that they can't be done together. And so then you got to choose one, either evolution or God, you pick. And I mentioned last time that the idea of a false dichotomy, that's a false dichotomy. There are many cases in which it's not either or, and you can very much exist in this. And so I don't think it never occurred to me to think that whether it was literal 7 days or not mattered. It never came up until someone else brought it up very aggressively. And I'd say I had a little bit of time where I was thinking, what does evolution do and things like that. And eventually I became better at science and went, oh, wait a minute. These are accomplishing different things. And I like them accomplishing different things. They do have some overlap, but and that's fine. So the literal thing just never, it confused me actually, among other things. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I don't know if that answers.
Interesting little side note. So I kind of lean more towards it wasn't a literal 24-hour day, but I'm not opposed to it. Kind of, the firmament thing, right? Like, like again, but interesting in the Hebrew Bible, the Hebrew Bible that I have, it has commentary, and it says that the Hebrew uses cardinal numbers here, not ordinal numbers. And what that means is cardinal numbers are quantities, and ordinal numbers are positions in a series, if that makes sense. So the Hebrew does use cardinal numbers, implying a quantity. So I'm like, that's interesting, but still, what is a day? When it, whatever. So I just thought that was interesting. So
yeah.
Any other thoughts on that before we move on?
No.
Okay. All right. So I want to. I want to
Sorry.
move to chapter 2 really quickly,
Yeah.
before we take off, and just kind of talk about maybe a couple things in chapter 2, maybe chapter 3. We'll get through it pretty quick, but and this is the creation of man and woman, right, in the Garden of Eden, when the Lord God made the heaven.
The second one.
Yes, when the Lord God
The
made
second
the earth.
description.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
Made the earth and the heavens. Neither wild plants nor grains were growing on the earth, for the Lord had not yet sent rain on to water the earth. There were no people to cultivate the soil. Instead, springs came up. All that. Then God planted a garden in Eden East, placed man he had made. Right. It talked about how God formed man from the dust of the ground, and he breathed the breath of life into his nostrils, and the man became a living person. Here's a question I think a lot of people wrestle with, or some people at least wrestle with. Adam, historical, like, did he really live? Was he a real person, or is it figurative?
Sure.
Kind of the problem a little bit with this story is all of it, since this is a group together narrative structure, and then we're about to move into, or not narrative, but we're about to move into a narrative part of it. All of it is still kind of lumped together in the same thing, you know. I've always really liked the idea of a greater tribe of people, like God is kind of first establishing a group of people here. And so I not that I again, there's not too much you can kind of base out of here, but I don't to the same thing I think I already said earlier. I think this is a really great story trying to get the idea that God is choosing people, he is choosing individuals and groups and communities, and he has a plan. Importantly, I think to what I believe is the Bible in all of its forms is the inspired word of God, in that he is both speaking through the author and using their personality and their purpose of writing. That what he is just trying to say in the bigger thing is, here's what I was trying to do. Here is my intention for my creation, both the heavens and the earth and the things that inhabit it. And ultimately it comes from me, comes from my voice. You now have my living voice in you. You have the living breath of life going into you. And then for what will happen in the next chapter, this is what I want to come back to. I'm not trying to make a brand new thing. I didn't mess up with Eden. I didn't mess up with creation. I want to go back to this. And so to me, Adam gets to be our first seed of Jesus. You know, for me, I looking into the Bible, I go, okay, cool. Here's our first son of God. Not Messiah, not Savior, but just here is our first son of God. And that's Adam. Adam and Eve, son and daughter of God.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And C.S. Lewis does some fun stuff with those titles in the Lion, in all of them, but Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to kick it off. And it just makes it, I don't know, I think it's fun. I for me, Eric's dead on here. It's God, like Ryan talked about, God declaring the purpose, and then God actually, well, we use the word discipleship, discipling and things like that. Man, I hate it when that word's verbed. As I verb. But God teaches them. He says, let's make them like us. And then he then has Adam naming things. So what's he doing? He's declaring their purpose, their fate. So he's delegating authority here. it seems. I'll go with that. I'll lighten it up. But it's when you end up with conclusion, I don't have to be right, but if my conclusion right now, if where I'm at right now works better than the other things I've done, that's where I am now. So I fully expect again to get to wherever we're going and go, oh, I was way off. But
We all were.
it'll be right. And hopefully it's, but you followed me. You were faithful. That's what I'm hoping for, is that there's enough humility in my walk here. As at some point, someone's going to hear this podcast and go, "These guys are heretics. They don't believe this." So I'm asking you to have some humility, and maybe you're just much more brilliant than we are, and we need to learn. So teach us. Yeah, so do that. But anyway, it's God doing this, teaching Adam how to do this, and I fully agree with Eric that this is the setup to the whole story. If we go, here we are in 2025, how did we get here? If everything's a dumpster fire, it kind of feels that way. How did we get here? And you keep jumping back, and eventually you go, well, where did it all come from? Did this just, explode out of nothing? Or whatever, however you want to put that, or was there an intention to it? I lean toward the intention thing. Let's be honest, I also think there's an explosion, but I think it's an intentional explosion. But who cares if you don't agree with me? That's fine. We can still hang out, But this intention then is because of what he's trying to do in giving humankind the ability to be like him. There's also the ability to choose not to, and that's what when we hit chapter 3. So how do we get to dumpster fire? It begins here, not with God, but with the people whom God has made. So I question years and years ago that I stumped me for a long time was then God's responsible. And I finally came to the realization that, and he took responsibility. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, it doesn't make it all okay, but he didn't initiate he wasn't the causal agent in the fall. So, and we're not there yet, but anyway, that's what I think is going on.
Yeah. It's interesting. Because like with the other things we've talked about today, I hear people sometimes argue over, was Adam a literal person, or is it figurative? Is it metaphor? Whatever. And just whatever the answer is, it doesn't change the story. And that's just a side note. That's an amazing, if that's an amazing story, that those little details, like if you change them one way or the other, it doesn't change the story. You know what I mean? I think that's incredible storytelling. Just side note. But I do think
yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I realize.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
No, if you just go, well, were Hansel and Gretel real? You go, what? And I know that's a story. That literally is a story, but them not being real still accomplishes the story.
Yeah.
And the story's still accomplished. So I don't know. It just, whatever. Anyway, I interrupted.
Yeah. Parables, the parables that Jesus told, they were made up stories, you know what I mean? To communicate principles, to communicate, moral, ideals. And so, could this be that? I'm not saying that it is, but I'm just asking the question, right? I do think it's interesting that the word Adam in Hebrew just means human being. It just means humanity. And from what I understand,
Adam from the Adamah.
Yeah. From the dirt, right?
Yeah, he's dirt man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big Ben.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that.
Adam from the Adamah.
So
why is he named Adam? Adamah?
I do think it's interesting too, though, that there's that it's not used as a proper noun in Hebrew. The word Adam, so it's not a name. It's just human, So just interesting. I don't know what that means. I don't think that should skew anyone one direction
Yeah.
over the other. I just think it's interesting. So,
Which is the point, is that little bit is interesting,
mhm.
but it doesn't make a decision for you. It doesn't lean you in any direction any more than the things that I'm kind of pushing against are making decisions. I'm saying just let them be cool. Let them be something you're curious about.
Yeah.
Well, is it 7 days? Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Do I have enough information? Actually, no, I don't. Or I have enough information to say, there's some questions. So we go, okay. Does it change the story? Nope. And so we're good.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going to be interesting as we continue to go through this podcast and going through different stories. At what point do we go and now it turned literal? Like you can go, okay, and Abraham, we could start putting dates on things, but
Well, there's
then
a different style. Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
no, and I was going to say
you
that
hit chapter 12 and it's a totally different, it's the same
Correct.
book, but different writing. Yeah.
100%, yeah, and so you can, but then practicing that later on, just one of the things I want the listeners to kind of keep picking up on this, as we're asking the same questions, we're kind of joining in this as we're all continuing to learn and do
Yeah.
research and all this
Wonderful.
stuff,
Yes.
if only to dive deeper in our love with God, or to educate the people around us to feel more confident in their relationship with God. And so answering some of these questions is essential just for some firm foundation that there was intention in the writing. So just because
Yes.
these very specific details aren't true, you could find your rock on the intention of God wanting this story to be told. And so all we're trying to clarify is the intention of that story, of what God really wants his followers to be, into how that would educate our obedience later. And so there is an honor, both a fear of God and a love of God, a fear that he can do anything, and a love that because he can do everything, he still chose you. So the
Yeah.
fear and love
Nice.
of that is I think is really, really important, especially in these first little things. And when he gets to his last creation and says, very good, very tov, like there's an honor that if you could put yourself in the seat of Adam in this and go, God chose me to be created. And no matter what hardship I might have faced in life or might face in life,
Yeah.
there is still a purpose. And if he still gave an option to Adam, he's giving an option to me. Cool.
Yes.
I'm going to partner to these things, you know?
Yes.
Yep. And so, yeah, so like find your confidence in the power of the statement, not not on the details of it. I think that's where we might have gotten a little bit backwards. At least I did in my educational, like, church upbringing. I mean, God bless the Sunday school teachers and the lesson plans and all that stuff. Thank you for doing the work and bringing us here. But now let's go to the part of keep the power of God. And so, and he chose you. Like, I love that part.
Yeah. Nice. Love it.
Yeah, it's good. One last thing that I want to kind of discuss, and then we can get out of here. And I'll summarize it. I won't read it. Chapter 3 is famous because it's the fall of man, right? So we going into chapter 3, God created everything. It was good. He created human beings. It was very good. And then, he took a rib from Adam's side, and he made woman and helper. It's not good that man should be alone, all that. And everything is exactly the way God intended it to be. And then Adam and Eve have this encounter with a serpent that scripture says it's the shrewdest of all animals. And the serpent tempts Eve to disobey God. God said, you can eat from any tree in the garden except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat that one. And the serpent's like, God just doesn't want you to be like him. You could eat that, that kind of thing. She eats, and then she convinces Adam to eat, and once he eats, their eyes are opened and everything's ruined from that point. A question that you guys probably, I think I know probably what you guys think, but is this serpent Satan? Is it the devil? Can we make that assumption?
Only with other texts.
Yeah.
You have to go possibly to Jesus, I think, where he calls him the old serpent, to put that connection. There might be, I'd have to look it up. I've never really researched it. He might be, whatever the Satan is, might be referenced as a serpent too. But yeah, I think that's what you'd have to do to connect that. But we assume it.
Yeah.
And I'm not against it. It's fine. It's something that is intent on going and not agreeing with what God has said and leading something astray.
Yeah. What do you think, Eric?
I think it's potentially one or the other in the storytelling. Either the serpent is not the devil, or it is the devil and it wasn't a serpent. So it's but either either it was a nickname, or it was some other shrewd and cunning animal that could talk that Eve in this story is not shocked by. So we get no other evidence that any other animal talks. But also there's not much interaction with any other creature or animal. So you could maybe toss up that, hey, animals used to talk. I don't know. They're, but I don't know, Animal Farm style. And were you trying to think of the rules?
I don't know, Mr. Tumnus.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Santa Claus is coming too. And so I think that there's I like me following the mythology of the story. Again, me meaning mythology of like that this is a larger story trying to encapsulate a greater thing we can't fully understand. That the idea of the serpent is a nickname for this cunning evil one, and so that there was some sort of acknowledgement that there is other spiritual presences that have access into this place as well, which I think would lean towards some of the free will, that this was a protected space, but we have the choice of choosing to follow or not, that he wasn't, we don't see the angels guarding Eden until we made a choice.
Mhm.
So then what was happening on the outside of Eden, again, to just continue to follow the story with it. So
Mhm.
I lean towards, in reading the story, this is Satan, not just a cunning animal. We don't need another evil figure that doesn't pop up any other point. We can just keep the evil one being the evil one right where he is. So
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Greg,
to be
what-
that guy, it also doesn't do any work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the point is, we were tempted
yes.
and we opted for the temptation.
Yeah. What you said, Greg, I think it matters a lot to the way we understand it, look at it. We can't understand that this is probably Satan without other texts. So if all we had was Genesis,
Mhm.
I don't see an arch nemesis super bad guy, you know what I mean? Like God, I don't see God's enemy here.
No.
Like
No.
God's enemy tempted human beings, and
Right.
I just see a creature who tried to throw tried to gum up the works a little bit, you know what I mean? I don't know why it doesn't. Again, what you said doesn't do the work. I don't know why.
We don't know why.
Yeah, but I'm if all I had was Genesis, if I had to name an enemy at the end of Genesis 3, the enemy is humans. God's
Oh,
enemy
yeah.
is humans.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Which would be jarring for some people. It'd be what? Yeah, we're not the good guys in the story, you know. Like
But we're
God,
victims.
what's that?
But we're victims.
Right.
That's
No,
not what the story's doing.
we're the ones that disobeyed. We're the ones that did wrong. We're the ones that broke everything. You know, if
But
they're if all
Ryan, they had a spiritual influence telling them to go astray. So what should our response be to that? It's they also had a greater spiritual influence telling
Yep.
them not to go astray.
Yep. Absolutely.
Sort of like every waking moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Crazy.
so what voice are you listening to?
Yeah.
You know, that's I think that's one of the things we can pull from that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, which voice are you going to listen to? You're going to listen to the greater spiritual voice that wants what's best for you. You're going to listen to the lesser spiritual voice, you know? So,
The one who created everything and has put chaos into order, who said, this is how things function. And he says, look, here's everything. You have everything except for this one thing. I'm just saying, don't do this one thing. And so I hear people say, well, why would God put the tree there in the first place?
Yeah.
That's a weird question, but we're so jacked up that it seems like a reasonable one. Let me put it, hopefully this makes sense. God said you can have everything except for that one thing. And you went, but I want that one thing. No. You can have everything. Just don't burn down the house.
Mm.
But I want to burn down the house really bad. I just want to know, is fire hot? You know, or whatever silly thing I can make fun of it. But do you understand how crazy this idea is, that having been given everything, you go, yeah, but not really everything, is it? Wait, what? He said, take care of the earth. And effectively we're going, not the whole thing, right? Can I just do this little? And he's like, no, it doesn't. I'm telling you, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I can't have you make it work this way, though, without you having the option. But understand, if you do that, it breaks everything. And I can't really explain to you what broken means because you don't know what broken is.
Right.
And then suddenly you do. And the only way you can know it is having broken it. Man, I wish you hadn't done that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's good.
So we vilify different weird things. We get interested in things, and I get it, because I mean, these stories are compelling. That's what and I kind of pick on them in the interpretation, but they're compelling. I should be more positive in my affirmation of read it, man, engage it, but don't stunt your growth in it. Allow it to continue to allow yourself to meditate on this and let it seep in so that you start thinking about it. And among the things you might come to is that original sin isn't an apple in a tree that someone grabbed because God, and it's sin because God just said, don't do it. No, this is God saying there's an order, and we decided that we weren't going to do that order. That even though God said this way, it's not just God from on high, with some, I don't know, staff pointing, act the way I tell you to act. It's saying this is how everything functions, right? If you are on top of a building, don't step off the edge, because gravity is a thing. We now call it gravity. You're going to fall and you're going to hit hard. So, and you may not recover. So you go, don't do this. You with little kids, you go, no, we don't run out into the street. You evil parents are limiting your child's freedom which should sound ridiculous, because it is. And so are our petty, kind of silly responses to the idea of God saying, don't do this, because this is the limit of what you are capable of. And I really can't even explain that to you, because You don't know what's on the other side. You only know good. You only know Tov. You are Tov. How can I explain Ra to you? I'm not gonna. Don't go that way. Anyway.
That's good, which makes me think of something that I heard another friend of mine say. He's a pastor. I don't know if you guys know Lance Riley at all. Shout out Lance if you ever watch this to listen. But he said once in relation to this idea of like grieving and, you know, being angry and healthy, you know, are there healthy ways to grieve and unhealthy ways to grieve? And he goes, I'm inclined to think that nothing we do as far as like negative emotions is healthy or unhealthy. Like we were never meant to grieve. God never intended for us to have to deal with bad, you know, so who's to say what's healthy and what's unhealthy? You know what I mean? Like, you know, as far as scripturally goes or whatever, I'm like, just the way he put it, I think I probably butchered it, but the way he like said it to me just kind of stuck with me. It kind of changed me. I'm like, yeah, man, like we were only supposed to know good, you know, and now that we've been introduced to bad, like we don't know how to handle it. We don't know how to respond to it, you know?
Yeah. If I could like to a little bit of, I mean, I think both of you guys in here, I would say even to that statement, that I think is the general feeling you get, the tension you feel in all of the Old Testament, and the solution of Jesus is, this is how you grieve. This is how you love. This is how you care.
Beautiful.
This is what you do. This then is how you should pray. This then is how you should eat together and do community together. So it's like when you start, I love that in the context of like, if it can, you could start to feel the heartbreak compared to the own tension in your life of I don't know what to do with this information that I've just received. I've been hurt, or this bill doesn't make sense. This diagnosis doesn't make sense. That is the tension of the Old Testament. You know, we want to talk about the 400 years of silence and all this stuff. No. I'm talking about the 1,000 years of tension of we don't know. We don't have an answer. We're trying to figure it out. Okay, so don't eat dead things. Got it. Okay, cool. Like we got some sort of rule of law, but now we don't have a rule of life. Jesus comes onto the picture and says, I don't want you to just suffer through life until you die. I want to give you eternity, like this. And so like, I go, yes, I feel that tension. I feel the Old Testament tension of this decision of temptation. And I go, ugh, like, and I love the thing you said, Greg, which was the like, God, why did you put this tree in front of me? Like, and you know, God, why did you give me this flat tire? God, you know, like, or you blame the enemy. Oh, the enemy's just on my back. You know, he's really after me. And it's like, no, this is just the life. And now we have choices of how to deal with that life. And then to Ryan, what you said, to Lance's bigger picture, this was never the biggest problems in our lives were never supposed to be the problems we faced. The problem we were supposed to face was, how am I going to spend time with God today? Like that was supposed to be your biggest problem of the day. You know, like
how do I reconnect to life? If you, even to jump to New Testament, one of the ways you can see Jesus is life versus death. Jesus versus, there's a great book called Jesus versus the Forces of Death. And so you see him healing the guy with the leprous arm at the synagogue, where he can't do anything. He can't be out and he can't go to religious things and things like that. And so Jesus heals him. He's back into community. He's back into life. Jesus has moved him from a station of death into a station of life. This is incredible. And this is what we're talking about, having the Hebrew ruach of God blown into our nostrils, that the very voices that we're using right now are given by God. There's a Hebrew version of, when I die, my breath goes back to him.
My favorite.
But yeah, this is the beauty that's going on, is life is living us, but We're live things inside a kingdom of death.
Hmm.
Being called to, as Eric's talking about, to live out the kingdom of life inside this kingdom of death, until eventually things change and we live life in life. But right now, inside this, we can be voices of life to those who need voices of life. This is the gospel, guys.
Yeah,
This is,
amen.
and that's
Yeah.
a whole other, there's a bunch of podcasts, right? But this
Yeah.
is the gospel that hope can be brought. The hope that we've been given is this rebreathing. So at the end of one of the gospels, it says Jesus breathed on them. This feels like Genesis.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where God blew
Mm.
into the knot and there's life, and Jesus saying, here I breathe, here's the Holy Spirit. Here I give you life back again to you. And
Money.
beautiful.
That's so good. That's so
Yeah.
good. And I think that's the perfect place to end our podcast today.
Yeah.
Man, so good. Such a good conversation, guys. Thank
Yeah, it was
you.
fun.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
you.
If you would do us a favor, if you would take a moment to rate us on whatever podcast platform you're listening to, like us on YouTube, subscribe, comment, that would help us out a ton. That would expand. That would help us expand to multiple, new levels, help us reach new people, all that stuff. Leave a 5-star review. No 1 stars, please. We don't want any of that.
Send Ryan flowers.
Send me flowers. Send Greg chocolates. Eric, what do you want?
Money.
Money.
Okay, just straight cash, homie.
Yeah.
Straight cash. Okay.
All under the table.
Yes.
Unmarked bills.
Mhm.
Yes. And then you can check us out on social media too. We're on all of them: Instagram, TikTok. We're on all of them. And
All the
so
things.
find us there. Follow us.
Is that where you're doing
Um,
dances?
And I'm not.
I'm
'cause
dragging this over. Sorry.
I'm a gimp right now. No, you're good. But
Did you blow your knee?
yeah. I'm surgery March 13th. So
Nice.
yeah. So
Fun.
your support
Ruby's
means
back.
the world to us, guys. Together we can share all this odd, weird content with the world. So yes. Guys, I have one last did you know, and then we can get out of here. Okay.
Cool.
Did you know that 90% of the United States population lives within a 10-minute drive of a Walmart?
Wow.
Yeah. They
90%.
tell you that in Walmart training. I
Yeah.
work
Do
at
they?
Walmart. Yeah. And they make a big
Wow.
point to let you know. And,
That's too many Walmarts. It's too big.
Yeah.
Down with the big box corporations.
that's right. That's right.
I'm just kidding, Walmart.
Unless
Don't come
I'm-
after me.
And unless I need something
Yeah.
Uh,
Or
right.
they're a sponsor
that is
later in
less
the future.
expensive.
And
Yeah.
then-
Unless I
then-
need to save money and live better.
The Odd Testament is sponsored by Walmart. They're not. I'm joking right now. I don't want to get
Yeah.
sued. That's a
Yeah.
joke.
All right. Right.
And we need to stop saying
All
Walmart because no free shout outs. So
Oh,
yeah, Walmart, if you
we're
want us
gonna
to
get
keep
them
saying-
rich.
Yeah.
We're gonna get them rich.
Yeah. If you want us to keep saying your name, Walmart, you gotta sponsor us. So.
Pony up.
Yeah,
Sorry.
right. All right, guys. Thanks for
Have you
joining
guys
us.
used made in pans? Anyway,
I love
right, guys.
every time I try to end it, you always just bring it back.
you're welcome. All right.
All right, guys. See you
Yeah.
next time.
Have a good one.